functional medicine to help you heal from the inside out. I'm Kim Larson. I'm a certified functional nutrition coach and also a Fast Like a Girl coach and founder of Larson Nutrition and LarsonBotanicals.com. So today's conversation is not just about fertility, it is about biological decline. It is about a generational health. It's about whether modern science is quietly eroding the very mechanisms that allow us to produce, reproduce, thrive, and pass forward resilience to our children. Male fertility is declining at a rate that should concern every single person of reproductive age. And frankly, every policymaker, healthcare provider, and parent. It is not speculative. It is not political. This is documented in peer-reviewed literature across multiple decades. In 2017, a landmark meta-analysis was published in Human Reproduction Update by Dr. Shanna Swan and her colleagues. And this study did not examine a few hundred men, but it was literally in 1973 to 2011, 185 studies were compiled, and it included nearly 43,000 men across America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand based samples. They're not just men, seeking infertility treatment. They were meant to represent the general male population. And what the researchers found was astounding. Sperm concentration declined by more than 50% over that time frame from 1973 to 2011. That's astounding. Total sperm count declined by nearly 60%. And when the team reanalyzed the slope of decline, they found something even more disturbing. The rate of decline accelerated after the year 2000. This was not leveling off, it was steepening. When this study was just published, critics attempting to dismiss it by suggesting that laboratory methods had changed over time, but the authors anticipated that critique. They adjusted for abstinence time before sample collection, for geographic region, for age, for study methodology. The downward trend persisted even after controlling for all those variables. Dr. Swan later expanded on this work in subsequent analysis and public discussions, emphasizing that when a biological parameter declines by over 50% in 1 to 2 generations, we're not witnessing random fluctuation. We are witnessing environmental or systemic disruption. And sperm count is not only metric declining, because in 2022, an update to the original analysis, again published in Human Reproduction Update, incorporated more recent global data and found that the decline is now observed not only in Western countries, but across South America, Africa, and Asia as well. The globalized nature of the trend suggests that this is not a regional anomaly. It aligns with modernization, industrialization, and metabolic shifts that transcend borders. But I want to talk about like the sperm concentrations, which is not just one dimension of male fertility, which is only one dimension of it. When researchers examine sperm motility, and this is the capacity of sperm to swim progressively toward an egg, they find consistent reductions. Now, obviously, people are still getting pregnant, but not as many people are getting pregnant anymore and not having children. Some people just don't want to have children, and especially the younger generations, more and more of them are saying they don't want to have children. Now, they might change their minds, but a majority of them don't. And so this is part of the problem of our fertility is people choosing not to have children, and also the lowering of the testosterone in men. So studies in journals such as Fertility and Sterility and Andrology have documented declines in progressive motility over recent decades. And perhaps even more concerning is the increase in sperm DNA fragmentation. Now, let me talk about DNA fragmentation. This refers to, the breaks or damage in the genetic material carried within the sperm head. So elevated DNA fragmentation is associated not only with reduced fertilization rates, but with higher miscarriage rates, impaired embryo development, and long-term health risks in offspring. So even when fertilization occurs, right, and damaged DNA can compromise embryonic integrity. Research published in Reproductive Biomedicine Online has shown that men with elevated oxidative stress markers have significantly higher DNA fragmentation indices. This links sperm quality directly to systemic inflammation and metabolic health. And this is where the conversation becomes urgent. Sperm health is a reflection of systemic physiology. The process of spermatogenesis, the creation of sperm, requires tightly regulated hormonal signaling from the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland and the testes. It requires robust mitochondrial function because sperm are highly energy dependent cells. And it requires adequate micronutrients for DNA replication and membrane formation. And this requires low oxidative stress to protect delicate lipid membranes and genetic material. So when sperm, you know, parameters decline, say across populations, it signals that something upstream is destabilizing the metabolic and endocrine health. And when we place the sperm data alongside testosterone data, the pattern becomes even clearer. In 2007, a pivotal study was published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism by Travison and colleagues. This study examined testosterone levels in American men over time and found that testosterone concentrations were significantly lower in more recent cohorts compared to earlier generations, even after adjusting for age and body mass index. In other words, a 40-year-old male in 2004 had lower testosterone than a 40-year-old man in 1987, even if their weight and health markers were comparable. Subsequent studies, including analysis published in Andrology and the Journal of Urology, have replicated similar findings in different populations. Testosterone decline appears generational. It's not merely age-related. And testosterone is not just about libido or muscle mass. It's the primary androgen driving spermatogenesis. This is where it's producing the sperm. And it regulates the function of Sertoli cells, which support developing sperm cells within the seminiferous tubulus. This is basically in your genitals and your testes. It influences mitochondrial efficiency. It affects red blood cell production, bone density, mood stability, insulin sensitivity. I mean, it's amazing where this is where metabolic disease is coming in as well. So when testosterone declines at the population level, sperm production declines with it, right? But here's where it becomes even more complex. Testosterone decline and sperm decline are not isolated phenomena. They are intimately connected to metabolic syndrome. And metabolic syndrome is characterized by central obesity, insulin resistance, elevated triglycerides, low HDL cholesterol, and hypertension. And the prevalence of metabolic syndrome has increased dramatically over the same decades that sperm and testosterone have declined. Now, a study published in Diabetes Care demonstrated that men with insulin resistance have significantly lower total and free testosterone levels. The mechanism is multifactorial. Insulin resistance increases inflammatory cytokines such as TNF alpha and IL-6, and these suppress hypothalamic signaling, which, with elevated insulin levels, promote increased aromatase activity in adipose tissue. That's your fat tissue, converting testosterone into estradiol. So now you've got more female hormones coming in. You're getting man boobs. You're getting belly fat. Increased estradiol feeds back to suppress luteinizing hormone secretion from the pituitary gland, reducing testosterone production further. And this creates a hormonal cascade in which visceral fat accumulation leads to testosterone decline, which leads to further fat accumulation. The condition has been termed obesity associated secondary hypogonadism, right? So you're overweight and you have fat around your gonads, and this is causing more estrogen and less testosterone. So, research published in the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology has shown that weight loss in obese men can significantly restore testosterone levels, reinforcing the direct link between metabolic health and androgen status. Now, had I known this way before that our generations were declining and everything, maybe I would have had, like my best friend has 4 boys. Maybe I would have worked at having more children, but I didn't. Now consider what sperm require at a cellular level. Sperm cells are among the most metabolically active cells in the body, and their motility depends on ATP generated by mitochondria located in the midpiece of the sperm. Now, mitochondrial dysfunction, which is central to insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome, directly impairs motility. Furthermore, sperm membranes are rich in polyunsaturated fatty acids, making them particularly vulnerable to lipid peroxidation in the presence of oxidative stress. So this is all interesting how it's all tied together, right? So elevated reactive oxygen species damage both the membrane integrity and the DNA stability. And that's why we see a rise in Down syndrome, and we're seeing in all these diseases for our children, right? Not just Down syndrome, but autism and more. So a review published in Oxidative Medicine and Cellular Longevity highlighted oxidative stress as a primary mediator of male infertility. The authors noted that even subclinical metabolic dysfunction increases reactive oxygen species production, which damages sperm DNA long before overt disease is diagnosed. So typically what happens is you're eating all this junk food, you're eating SpaghettiOs, you're eating raviolis, you're eating Doritos, you're eating ho-hos and whatever those highly processed foods are, and you're not giving your body enough protein to help build the testosterone. And all these highly processed foods are causing your C-reactive protein to go up, your insulin to go up, your fat to build up. So when we observe that rising obesity rates and the rising insulin resistance, the declining physical activity because we're sitting watching TV or gaming, increased ultra processed food consumption like the SpaghettiOs and the Doritos and so on and so forth, the chronic sleep deprivation because we're up late watching TV or on our phones or whatever, and exposure to endocrine disrupting chemicals such as cleaning chemicals and air plug-ins and scented candles that are not, with organic ingredients. So we're looking at a perfect storm targeting male reproductive physiology, but that's just not affecting men because declining male fertility directly impacts women. Women may undergo invasive fertility treatments, hormonal stimulation, and emotionally taxing IVF cycles, only to discover that the male factor infertility is contributing significantly to the difficulty in conception. And data from the American Society for Reproductive Medicine indicates that factors contribute to approximately 40 to 50% of infertility cases. Yet, culturally, fertility conversations still disproportionately center on women. Moreover, sperm DNA fragmentation increases miscarriage risk. Women may endure repeated pregnancy loss without fully understanding that paternal DNA integrity is part of the equation. So it's not all that women can't have it, it's also men. And beyond fertility clinics, there is a broader societal layer. Global birth rates are declining across developed nations. According to data from the World Bank and the United Nations Population Divisions, total fertility rates have fallen below replacement level, approximately 2.1 children per woman. In much of Europe, North America, East Asia, countries like South Korea have total fertility rates near or below 1, meaning each generation is roughly half the size of the one before it. Sociologists point to economic pressures, cultural shifts, delayed marriage, and urbanization as contributors. Those are real factors. But biological fertility must also be examined honestly. When male sperm counts decline by over 50% in 2 generations, and testosterone levels follow, this similar trajectory, we can't ignore the biological dimensions. This is not alarmism, it is mathematics. If fewer couples can conceive naturally and more rely on assisted reproductive technologies, and if metabolic disease continues to rise in younger populations, then reproductive resilience weakens. Your metabolic health today influences not only your ability to conceive, but the epigenetic programming of your children. Research in Nature Reviews Endocrinology has explored paternal epigenetic inheritance, showing that obesity and metabolic dysfunction in fathers alter the DNA methylation patterns in sperm. So what happens is these changes influence metabolic gene expression in offspring, and then increasing susceptibility to insulin resistance and obesity. Now, this can be changed by pattern changes. So if you were to, say, give up your child and adopt them to somebody else, if that child is not introduced to highly processed foods and is given whole foods, they will not get into this cycle of obesity. So animal models have demonstrated that male mice fed high processed diets produce offspring that have altered glucose metabolism as well, even when the offspring consume normal diets. So human observational studies suggest similar associations. This means that male health is not isolated to the present generation. It shapes the next generations to come. And when we step back and look at declining testosterone, declining sperm counts, rising metabolic syndrome, increasing endocrine disruption, falling birth rates, and generational health shifts, we must ask a difficult question. Are we metabolically eroding our species in real time? This is a call to awareness because the same systems undermining fertility, insulin resistance, inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, hormone disruption, are also driving cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, autoimmune disease, and mood disorders. There's a whole host of things that happen when you're eating these highly processed foods, and it's just a cascade of one thing after another. Fertility is the canary in the coal mine, kind of, so to speak, right? When reproduction declines, it signals that biological resilience is under strain. And if we ignore it, we risk normalizing dysfunction. When we examine the acceleration in sperm decline over the year 2000, it becomes essential to look at the environmental landscape during that same period. So, industrial chemical production expanded dramatically in the late 20th century. And when it came widespread exposure to compounds capable of interfering with endocrine signaling. And endocrine disrupting chemicals, often abbreviated as EDCs, endocrine disrupting chemicals. These EDCs function by mimicking, blocking, or altering the synthesis and metabolism of hormones. Testosterone synthesis depends on precise signaling through the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. So, gonadotropin releasing hormone stimulates luteinizing hormone, which stimulates Leydig cells in the testes to convert cholesterol into testosterone. And each step requires receptor sensitivity, mitochondrial integrity, and enzymatic precision. So, endocrine receptors interfere at multiple points along the cascade. Phthalates from plastics provide one of the clearest examples. Research published in Environmental Health Perspectives has shown that higher urinary phthalates, metabolites, correlate with lower circulating testosterone levels in adult men. This is why I tell people all the time: get rid of your plastic water bottles. Get rid of your plastic Tupperware. Do not microwave in plastic. Get rid of it. Get your glass containers. Mechanistically, phthalates impair steroidogenic enzymes within Leydig cells, reducing the conversion of cholesterol into pregnenolone, the precursor to testosterone. And reducing pregnenolone production diminishes downstream androgen synthesis. And bisphenol A, commonly known as BPA, binds to estrogen receptors and exerts weak estrogenic activity. A study in reproductive technology demonstrated that men with higher serum BPA levels exhibited lower sperm concentration and motility. And BPA is also in plastics. BPA exposure also influences aromatase activity, increasing conversion of testosterone into estradiol, which is the female hormone, and altering androgen to estrogen balance. Glyphosate, widely used as an herbicide, like in wheat and soy and corn, has been examined for its potential impact on mitochondrial function. Research and toxicology reports suggest that glyphosate, think about Agent Orange, think about Roundup, right? Glyphosate is just another name for all these weed killers and killing plants. But with genetically modified plants, you can spray all the glyphosate you want on these genetically modified plants and they won't die. That's what they've done with these genetically modified plants, so that you can spray the glyphosate. So this is the rhythm that they've done, is they create these seeds that are genetically modified so that, Bayer and Monsanto can work together and create all the glyphosate so that you can spray it all over. And this is causing so many problems for the humans today. So reports suggest that glyphosate exposure increases oxidative stress markers in reproductive tissue. So you've got this corn, you've got this wheat, you've got this soy, and it's all genetically modified. So now you can put all the weed killer and all the bug killers all over it. And the current administration has just agreed that you can spray as much as you want on your crops. Don't you worry about it. There are no limits. Just go ahead and spray it all you want. Make sure that your crops survive. And this is why we are getting so sick. This is why all of these diseases are ramping up, right? So your sperm cells rely on efficient mitochondrial ATP production for motility. Elevated oxidative stress disrupts the mitochondrial membrane potential and reduces energy availability. Per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, known as PFAS, accumulate in human tissues and persist for years due to their chemical stability. A 2018 study in JAMA Network identified associations between PFAS exposure and reduced semen quality in young men. PFAS compounds interfere with steroid hormone synthesis and alter lipid metabolism, creating downstream effects on sperm membrane composition. Exposure to these compounds begins early in fetal development. This represents a particularly sensitive window. So research from the study of future families, published in Human Reproduction, demonstrated that prenatal phthalate exposure correlates with shorter anogenital distance in male infants, a biomarker linked to reduced androgen exposure during development, and shorter anogenital distance in adulthood has been associated with lower sperm counts. Now, the implications extend across decades. Sertoli cell proliferation occurs primarily during fetal and early postnatal life. Sertoli cells determine the upper limit of sperm production in adulthood, and disruption during developmental windows establishes lifelong reductions in spermatogenic capacity. So while environmental toxicology exerts powerful influence, metabolic dysfunction amplifies its impact. Insulin resistance increases circulating insulin and glucose levels, driving systemic inflammation. Elevated inflammatory cytokines impair hypothalamic signaling and reduce gonadotropin release. So inflammatory stress within testicular tissue further compromises the Leydig and Sertoli cell function. So this means that your sperm production is down, the quality of your sperm is decreased, the production of all these sperm is less. A 2011 review in Molecular and Cellular Endocrinology detailed how pro-inflammatory cytokines directly impact steroidogenic acute regulatory protein, or STAR for short, a critical transporter responsible for moving cholesterol into mitochondria for testosterone synthesis. And without efficient cholesterol transport, androgen production declines. Visceral adipose tissue compounds the issue. Aromatase, highly expressed in adipose tissue, converts testosterone into estradiol. So now you've got testosterone, which you really need to produce the sperm and help nourish your gonads. Now is turning it into estradiol. So now you got man boobs, you got belly fat. So increased estradiol feeds back to the hypothalamus and pituitary, expressing luteinizing hormone secretion. Lower luteinizing hormone reduces Leydig cell stimulation, decreasing testosterone output further. It's just this whole cycle that just keeps compounding on top of it, right? And so to see 50 to 60% declines it's scary. And this cycle reinforces itself. Lower testosterone promotes muscle loss and increased fat accumulation. Reduced muscle mass impairs glucose disposal, worsening insulin resistance. The hormonal and metabolic feedback loop accelerates. Exercise physiology provides insights into how this loop can reverse. So resistance training stimulates acute increases in testosterone and growth hormone, particularly when large muscle groups are engaged, like through your legs in compound movements. Your legs are some of the biggest muscles that you have. Research published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology demonstrates that multi joint strength training protocols elevates total and free testosterone concentrations in men. So, say that you're doing a squat and you've got some weights in your hand, right? You got some big weights because you're a man. You do some squats and then you bring it up and you do a shoulder press, bring it back down, or maybe you do, I forget what they're called, like monkey pumps. Go squat down with, 50 pounds in your hands or 25 pounds in your hands or 30 pounds, 40 pounds, whatever you can handle, right? I can do 25 pounds in each hand. I squat down, lift it up, push up, come back down, squat down. This is something I do on a regular basis. If you're going to do shoulders out like this, you need 5 to 8 pounds. And you could just you go down and back up again for your shoulders, right? Or you do this for your shoulders, or you can squat down and you have to have your elbows up, but you can lower them down and back up again. And then also is you want to work the front of your shoulders. So you also want to, this is 5 or 8 pounds. You just lift the weights up. God, this shirt's making me look like I got big arms. So let's get back to, what this research that was published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology that demonstrated that multi-joint strength training protocols elevate total and free testosterone concentrations in men. And chronic resistance training improves insulin sensitivity. It reduces your visceral fat mass and it enhances mitochondrial biogenesis through upregulation of PGC1 alpha. Mitochondrial biogenesis increases the number and efficiency of mitochondria within muscle and reproductive tissues. This is amazing. Enhanced mitochondrial function improves ATP production, directly supporting sperm motility. So the sedentary behavior, in contrast, correlates with lower testosterone and poorer semen parameters. A study in fertility and sterility found that men engaging in moderate to vigorous physical activity exhibited higher sperm concentration and motility compared to sedentary counterparts. Go out for a walk, go out for a jog, walk for 5 minutes, jog for 2. Start somewhere, jog for 1 minute, jog for 30 seconds. Jog, just try jogging, okay? Walk for a little bit, jog a little bit. Walk a little bit, jog for a little bit, or just walk hills. If you got a step master, do the stairs. If you got any stairs in your house, walk up and down the stairs. Do some planks. Planks are awesome to work your core, your shoulders, your back. Do some rows. So you got maybe one hand on a chair, you're pulling up the rows like you're trying to start a lawnmower or something like that, right? There's so many great exercises that you can do to build muscle, and start somewhere. Just start. So muscle tissue functions as a metabolic organ. It serves as a primary site for glucose disposal and insulin mediated uptake, right? So when you've got, so you're going to, like, I have a banana I'm going to eat, right? That's going to cause, even though it has fiber in it, it's going to cause sugar. And so if I lift weights, actually, if your calves will take the most glucose, which is amazing to learn. If you just um, take your feet up and down to work your calf muscles, do it, standing up and stand up on your tippy toes and work your calves. That is the number one way to get rid of glucose in your system. Working your calves. You're going to have monster calves. So loss of muscle mass reduces metabolic flexibility, increasing circulating glucose and insulin levels. And the hormonal health depends on metabolic stability. And nutrition compounds the equation, right? So Zinc functions as a cofactor for numerous enzymes involved in testosterone synthesis. A randomized trial published in Nutrition demonstrated that zinc supplementation in marginally deficient older men increased serum testosterone levels. So, demonstrated that zinc supplementation in marginally deficient older men increased serum testosterone levels. And selenium supports glutathione peroxidase, protecting sperm from oxidative damage. You can have 2 Brazil nuts, and that will give you all the selenium that you need. 2 Brazil nuts a day, or one, one the next day, 2 the next day, 1 the next day, 2 the next day, is all the selenium that you need. Research in biological trace element research showed improved sperm motility following selenium supplementation in men with suboptimal levels. Don't go buy a supplement, just get some Brazil nuts and get the organic ones from, I think you can get it from Costco or maybe even Walmart or Aldi. It's amazing just having 2 Brazil nuts, and it's easy to pop them in, chew them, and it helps fill your belly. Gives you a little bit of protein, gives you a little bit of fiber. Omega-3 fatty acids also integrate into sperm membranes, enhancing fluidity and structural integrity. Now, I have shared multiple times this omega-3 that I take from Zenzino. I have a little shot glass. I put 2 ounces for my body size of oil into a shot glass, and then I add cold water. My husband takes 4 ounces of the oil. When we go for our functional health tests, and they test over 100 different biomarkers, our omega-3s are always at the top 1 percentile in the country. So I can tell you that by taking a Zenzino supplement, and I like the grapefruit one, but there's also there's a fruity tooty for the kids. There's other flavors that are out there, but this has been a game changer. I no longer have arthritis. Now, I also changed the foods that I was eating. I stopped eating gluten. I stopped eating highly processed foods. I don't eat pizza, and I don't eat junk food. But by eating cleaner and getting my omega-3s and not eating wheat, I've actually been able to get rid of my arthritis. So, when you have omega-3 fatty acids, which integrate into sperm membranes, enhancing fluidity and structural integrity. So, a study in the Human Reproduction found that higher omega-3 intake correlates with improved sperm morphology and concentration. Ultra-processed diets, characterized by refined carbohydrates like SpaghettiOs and Ho-Hos and Twinkies and candy bars and anything that is packaged. Now, there are bell peppers in a plastic bag that might come 3 bell peppers to a bag, right? It helps people seem to buy food when they put it in plastic. There's a local organic farm here in northern Michigan, and they have researched this. They'll put literally stuff in a bag, and then they'll put it not in a bag, and people will take what's in the plastic bag over taking it, putting it in their cloth bag. It just astounds me. So this is characterized by, refined carbohydrates, industrial seed oils such as canola oil, rapeseed oil, peanut oil. So these industrial seed oils promote oxidative stress and inflammation. And advanced glycation end products accumulate with chronic hyperglycemia, damaging proteins and DNA. Sperm DNA integrity suffers in high glucose environments. And then if you're not sleeping well, sleep further modulates hormone regulation. Testosterone secretion follows the circadian rhythm, peaking during deep sleep phases. And research in JAMA demonstrated that 1 week of sleep restrictions to 5 hours per night reduced daytime testosterone levels in healthy young men by 10 to 15% just with 1 week of sleep deprivation, right? So if you can imagine, if you've got multiple weeks at 10 to 15% decline every time, chronic sleep debt elevates cortisol. That's your stress hormone, which competes with reproductive hormone signaling, and it suppresses your gonadotropin release. Chronic stress compounds this suppression. Cortisol exerts inhibitory effects on the hypothalamus, reducing gonadotropin releasing hormone pulsatility. Reduced pulsatility diminishes luteinizing hormone secretion and downstream testosterone synthesis. So it's amazing how one thing affects the other, it affects the other, affects the other, affects the other. You've got to take care of your health. It's the only thing that you have. As these stressors accumulate, environmental toxins, metabolic dysfunction, sedentary behavior, micronutrient depletion, sleep deprivation, psychological stress, reproductive capacity becomes collateral damage. And women experience parallel consequences. Sperm DNA fragmentation increases miscarriage risk and reduces embryo viability, placing emotional and physical strain on women pursuing pregnancy. And rising metabolic dysfunction in men also correlates with altered seminal plasma composition, which influences immune tolerance within the female reproductive tract. And beyond conception, maternal metabolic health influences placental development and fetal programming. Now, research in the Lancet and Nature Communications has highlighted associations between paternal obesity and increased risk of childhood obesity and metabolism disease in offspring. And epigenetic modifications in sperm alter gene expression. These patterns governing glucose metabolism and adipogenesis. The societal implications extend further because population economists examining fertility decline across Europe and East Asia describe aging populations with shrinking workforce bases. Healthcare systems face increasing strain as chronic disease rises alongside demographic contraction. While cultural and economic factors influence birth rates, biological fertility establishes foundational capacity. Sperm decline of over 50% within 2 generations represents a biological signal demanding attention. Reproduction health reflects systemic vitality. If everybody had just 2 or 3 kids, 3 or 4 kids, and the love that you get from your children, yes, there are headaches, yes, there are troubles with it, but there is so much love from a child and what the child gives you for the length of your life. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't problems, right? So my mother had 3 children. The oldest one is a problem, but the next 2 are not. So it happens, right? When hormonal resilience weakens across populations, it indicates environmental and metabolic conditions misaligned with human physiology. And this conversation carries urgency because reproductive age spans a finite window, right? Your reproductive years are basically to 35, 40, and after 35, your eggs are declining, testosterone is declining. Men in their 20s and 30s today represent a generation shaped by ultra processed diets, pervasive endocrine disruptive exposure, reduced physical labor, chronic digital overstimulation, and disrupted circadian rhythms. Biology responds to environment. The encouraging reality lies in the regeneration nature of spermatogenesis. The full cycle of sperm development spans approximately 74 to 90 days. So, interventions targeting metabolic health, toxin reduction, resistance training, sleep restoration, and nutrition repletion produce measurable changes within one cycle. And research in andrology demonstrates improved semen parameters following structured weight loss and exercise programs over 12 weeks. That's just 3 months. Antioxidant therapy trials in reproductive biology and endocrinology show reduced DNA fragmentation in indices after targeted micronutrient support. I think that's amazing. And physiology remains responsive. The urgency exists because trends at the population level reflect aggregate behavior, individual change scales into generational impact. Male fertility decline signals systemic metabolic stress. Addressing it requires confronting lifestyle patterns that have become normalized yet biologically costly. The next layer of this discussion moves deeper into mitochondrial biology, circadian disruption, and the global demographic implications of sustained subreplacement fertility. Digital overstimulation late into the evening suppresses endogen melatonin release. Melatonin acts as both a circadian signal and a mitochondrial protector. It scavenges reactive oxygen species and stabilizes mitochondrial membranes. Reduced melatonin production weakens antioxidant defense inside reproductive cells. Being on your phone or watching the TV late, this is all very disruptive to your endocrine and to your body repairing itself and letting that oxygen species and stabilize mitochondrial membranes with scavenging. When circadian rhythm destabilizes, insulin sensitivity shifts, and cortisol remains elevated later into the evening. Glucose disposal becomes less efficient. Chronically elevated glucose increases glycation of proteins and lipids. And advanced glycation end products accumulate in tissues and alter cellular signaling, including within reproductive tissue. Over time, this environmental shifts from anabolic and regenerative to inflammatory and degenerative. Male reproductive physiology evolved under conditions of consistent light and dark cycles, high physical output, micronutrient dense whole foods, and minimal synthetic chemical exposure. Within 2 generations, the human environment has shifted dramatically toward prolonged artificial light exposure, sedentary work, calorie dense but nutrient poor food systems, and constant endocrine disrupting chemical contact. Biology adapts to the environment, but when environmental changes rapidly and physiology strains to keep pace, the velocity of change matters. And human endocrine systems evolved over thousands of years. Industrial chemical expansion occurred within decades. The World Health Organization estimates that more than 350,000 synthetic chemicals and mixtures are registered for production and use globally. Many lack long-term reproductive safety data. Bioaccumulation in adipose tissue creates chronic low-dose exposure over years. Reproductive tissue, rich in lipid membranes and hormone-sensitive cells, becomes a target. Right? Testosterone dysgenesis syndrome has emerged as a concept describing a cluster of male reproductive disorders, including reduced sperm counts, hypospadias, cryptorchidism, and testicular cancer. Research in human reproduction and environmental health perspective suggests that fetal exposure to endocrine disruptors during critical windows of development may contribute to this cluster. And disruption during early gestation alters testicular architecture and androgen signaling, creating lifelong reproductive vulnerability. And at the same time, the average age of puberty has shifted. Several longitudinal studies indicate that boys are entering puberty earlier compared to historical norms. Same thing for the females. Early hormonal shifts combined with environmental chemical exposure during adolescence may compound long-term reproductive impact. And the endocrine system during adolescence remains highly plastic and responsive to environmental signals. When environmental toxicology receives significant attention, lifestyle patterns amplify the underlying vulnerability. And the physical inactivity reduces nitric oxide production and endothelial function. Erectile dysfunction increasingly appears in younger men, as documented in studies published in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. Erectile dysfunction often precedes cardiovascular disease by several years. The vascular system supplying the testes depends on endothelial health. Impaired blood flow reduces nutrient and oxygen delivery to reproductive tissue. Strength training stimulates androgen receptor density in muscle tissue. Increased androgen receptor expression enhances the body's responsiveness to circulating testosterone. Sedentary behavior reduces receptor sensitivity, meaning even adequate testosterone levels exert weaker physiological effects. And over time, reduced receptor sensitivity can resemble functional androgen deficiency. Nutritional shifts also require deeper examination, right? So these nutritional shifts of eating highly processed foods that have no nutrients in them and no phytochemicals, none of these protective, plants have protective effects for our bodies. Eating these plants help protect our bodies. Dietary patterns characterized by high refined carbohydrate intake drive repeated insulin spikes. Chronic hyperinsulinemia suppresses sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG, reproduction in the liver. So it's your liver, it's your heart, it's your skin, it's the plastics in your body and your brain. Reduced SHBG alters free testosterone dynamics and increases hormone volatility. Stable glucose regulation supports stable hormone signaling. Micronutrient depletion extends beyond zinc and selenium. Magnesium participates in over 300 enzymatic reactions, including those involved in ATP synthesis and testosterone production. Vitamin D functions as a secosteroid hormone influencing reproductive tissue receptors. And research in clinical endocrinology shows positive correlations between vitamin D status and testosterone levels in men. Choline supports membrane integrity and methylation pathways critical for DNA replication. Folate and B12 participate in one carbon metabolism, influencing DNA synthesis and epigenetic programming within sperm cells. Now, about 75% of the population cannot methylate those two B vitamins. So when you start looking at folate and B12, It's better to get methylated forms unless you're tested and you know whether you can methylate these B vitamins. It's better to just get methylated forms so that you can actually make sure that you are methylating these B vitamins to help with your sperm cells. Inadequate intake of these nutrients increases homocysteine levels, which correlate with oxidative stress and impaired endothelial function. Now, the dietary omega 6 to omega 3 ratios have shifted dramatically in modern populations. Elevated omega 6 intake promotes pro inflammatory eicosanoid production. Sperm membranes rely on balanced fatty acid composition for flexibility and structural stability. And excessive inflammatory lipid mediators impair membrane function and reduce fertilization capacity. Sleep duration across industrialized nations has steadily declined over the past 50 years. Average sleep time now falls below 7 hours for many adults. Now, I can tell you that my body functions really well on 6.5 to 7 hours. I've always been that way ever since I was a young girl to even today. I'm maybe around 7 hours now, but 6.5 to 7, that's just when my body wakes up. That's what I go with. It just works for me. My brain is sharper at that point. I can get more done in the day. I function well. But some people need more than that. Some people need 8 or 9 or 10 hours of sleep. Testosterone secretion during deep sleep depends on consistent REM cycles. So you got to be dreaming. You got to be having this deep sleep. You got to breathe and breathe through your nose so that you're not snoring. Learn how to breathe through your nose. Chronic sleep restriction suppresses pulsatile luteinizing hormone release. Reduced luteinizing hormone decreases stimulation of Leydig cells. Testosterone synthesis declines gradually yet persistently. Now, stress physiology further compounds reproductive strain. Chronic activation of hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis elevates cortisol. Cortisol competes for cholesterol substrate, diverting resources away from sex hormone synthesis towards stress hormone production. Prolonged psychological stress correlates with reduced sperm concentration and motility in multiple observational studies. And when these factors all converge, environmental toxins, sedentary behavior, metabolic dysregulation, nutrient insufficiency, circadian disruption, chronic stress, right? The reproductive system reflects cumulative burden. The female impact unfolds in parallel. Sperm DNA fragmentation increases miscarriage risk. Couples pursuing pregnancy often focus primarily on female hormone panels and ovarian reserve markers. Male partners may receive a basic semen analysis evaluating count and motility without deeper investigation into DNA integrity or oxidative stress markers. Recurrent pregnancy loss frequently involves paternal contributions through compromised genetic material. And this is stressful for couples who are trying to get pregnant. Assisted reproductive technologies such as IVF and ICSA have increased globally. Data from the International Committee for Monitoring Assisted Reproductive Technologies indicates that millions of cycles are performed annually worldwide. While these technologies offer hope, they also reflect rising biological infertility. Laboratory fertilization bypasses certain natural selection mechanisms that typically favor the healthiest sperm. Long-term generational implications remain under ongoing study. So beyond individual couples, demographic patterns reveal broader consequences. According to the United Nations World Population Perspective Report, More than half of countries now experience fertility rates below replacement level. Japan's median age exceeds 48 years. South Korea's fertility rate recently fell below 1 child per woman. European nations face aging populations and shrinking workforce bases. Economic models from organizations such as OECD project increased strain on healthcare systems as working age populations contract while elderly populations expand. In social support structures, pension systems, and economic growth depend on demographic balance. Cultural and economic influences shape family size decisions. Yet, biological fertility capacity establishes the foundation upon which those decisions operate. And declining sperm quality and hormonal resilience influence that foundation. Paternal age has also increased globally. Advanced paternal age correlates with higher rates of de novo mutations in sperm. Research published in Nature Genetics demonstrates that each additional year of paternal age increases the number of new mutations transmitted to offspring. While many mutations remain benign, some with neurodevelopmental disorders occur. Metabolic health interacts with age-related mutation rates. Oxidative stress accelerates DNA damage. Effective oxidative systems and mitochondrial repair mechanisms mitigate mutation accumulation. Metabolic dysfunction amplifies genomic instability. The intergenerational dimensions becomes increasingly clear. Studies in Nature Communications and Cell have examined epigenetic modifications in sperm linked to paternal diet and obesity. DNA methylation patterns within genes regulating metabolism shift in response to paternal health status. Offspring exhibit altered insulin sensitivity and adiposity patterns, the adipose tissue, the fat in your gut and around your organs. Human studies support similar trends. Research from the Avon longitudinal study of parents and children found associations between paternal preconception BMI and increased adiposity in daughters. These associations suggest epigenetic inheritance pathways influencing long-term metabolic risk. Male fertility decline, therefore, extends beyond conception rates. It influences chronic disease prevalence in future generations. And the warning embedded in this data carries urgency for those still within reproductive windows. Spermatogenesis remains dynamic. Each cycle spans approximately 74 to 90 days, as mentioned earlier. Lifestyle changes enacted today influence sperm quality 3 months from now. Improvements in metabolic health, toxin reduction, nutrient density, sleep quality, and resistance training produce measurable changes within a single cycle. Clinical trials in andrology demonstrate that structured weight loss programs improve testosterone levels and semen parameters in obese men within 12 weeks. Antioxidant therapy trials using combination of zinc, selenium, CoQ10, and omega-3 fatty acids show reductions in DNA fragmentation and improvements in mortality. It's amazing what we can do with food and supplementation because our soils aren't strong enough unless you're growing your own and using organic methods. Antioxidant therapy trials, I mean, this is amazing. Get some zinc, get a couple of Brazil nuts, increase your CoQ10, get some omega-3 fatty fish oils, and that will help your DNA fragmentation and improve your motility. It's amazing. Resistance training increases insulin sensitivity and elevates androgen receptor density. So being insulin sensitive helps your body repair itself. And improved mitochondrial function enhances ATP production within sperm cells. Circadian alignment restores melatonin mediation and antioxidant protection. Physiology retains remarkable capacity for regeneration when environmental inputs shift. So getting rid of the plastics, adding glass in, drinking out of not a plastic bottle, or using glass to drink your water, or a metal bottle to drink your water. I have coffee in another metal bottle. It's important to use your metal bottle. A societal trend reflects aggregate behavior patterns. So individual transformation influences generational outcome. Reproductive resilience serves as a biomarker of metabolic integrity. Restoring it requires confronting lifestyle norms that undermine biological stability. So I want to, continue this conversation further, and we'll do that in the next podcast. But what I want to do is thank you for joining me today, and we can dig a little bit more into all this, because there's even more on how this impacts our biology, how it impacts how impacts women, how it impacts optimizing testosterone. So if this episode resonated with you, whether you're navigating fertility or optimizing testosterone, rebuilding metabolic health, or preparing your body for future children, know that intervention works when it is strategic and consistent. Inside my work at larsonnutrition.com, we focus on foundational systems that support reproductive resilience and blood sugar stabilization, nutrient density, detoxification pathways, resistance training, sleep alignment, and hormone supportive nutrition. When we repair the terrain, hormones respond. And when targeted supplementation is appropriate, practitioner grade support matters. At larsonbotanicals.com, we formulate science-aligned products designed to support antioxidant systems, liver function, mineral sufficiency, and metabolic balance, and exact pathways we discussed today. Because fertility is never isolated, it is systemic. And Larson Botanicals has created products that are non-hormone disruptive. You can listen to the Larson Health podcast and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Watch full episodes on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, snippets on social media like Instagram and TikTok, where we also share behind-the-scenes clips, recipes, and bonus insights from my coaching practice. And if you're ready to take your health to the next level through fasting nourishment, metabolic education, and lifestyle alignment, visit larsonnutrition.com to learn about my personalized programs, hormone supportive meal plans, and one-on-one functional nutrition coaching. Thank you for listening today, and catch up next week for new insights.